balancing acceptance and intention. This is part of our 4 weeks of looking into some of the wonderful quotes from Pema Chodron. Many of us are familiar with her for a long time, and the way she works with such a practical lens about our daily life. Interrupting our destructive habits. So just that one sentence, that one phrase of this first sentence, interrupting our destructive habits, is so practical, and it opens up our heart as well. Because what we do when we have destructive habits is we're usually trying to get away from something, and then we also usually shame ourselves for what we're trying to get away from and how we're getting away from it. Interrupting our destructive habits and awakening our heart is the work of a lifetime. And one of the things that also points to is that it takes more than a few weeks or months or years. This is something we do our whole life. That's something that I think many of us became much more aware of when COVID happened so suddenly and everything changed. A lot of our habits, certainly mine, came back because the level of fear went up and the level of, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if I'm going to be safe. I don't know if the people I love are going to die, if I'm going to die. So anytime we have that kind of a situation, especially when it's unexpected, things fall apart. And it's hard to take that opportunity to change. And yet here we are, more than 3 years later, and life has changed in a lot of ways. Some of them inconvenient, some of them really distressing, some of them have been wonderful. A lot of people discovered that working from home was a really wonderful way to work. And then some people are happy to go back into the workforce in person. Some people are continuing to be at home. But it also created a lot of loneliness and a lot of urgency around how are we going to connect with each other in a way that's deep enough to satisfy our need for connection. And this point that she has about our practice, whether it's our meditation practice or any kind of healing practice, awareness isn't about getting somewhere, but it's about ceasing to struggle. So this is the acceptance part. When we can relax with what is and stop struggling against it, that's a really big piece of work to do, and it's really difficult. One of the reasons it's difficult is because our nervous system is on red alert when things fall apart, when things are not the way that we want them to be, or when we don't feel safe with them as they are. So when we sit down to meditate and our whole mind is saturated with fear and compulsive thinking and catastrophic thinking and ruminating, it makes it very difficult to have any peace of mind. So this is what we're working with, these conditions in life. And we have this common experience right now over the last 3 years of COVID. But in fact, all of the time, we have a lot in common around what happens in our life. The details might be different, but we all know what it's like to have things fall apart. This is a picture of my dog and I from 1998, just before we went to India. The meditation takes us just as we are, with our confusion and our sanity. So this accepting ourselves, we work with this all the time. I don't often use the word Maitri. It's something that's more of a Buddhist concept. It's also a concept in yoga meditation, but we don't use the word that often. But that unconditional friendliness towards ourselves, we do work with that all the time. And to have this direct relationship, this simple relationship with the way we are, there's a lot of things that are in the way of that. One of the things that's in the way of that is the nervous system. When we're in a fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response, we really don't have the capacity to be really present. We're in a survival mode. But also, if we have a big inner critic, if we're shaming ourselves a lot, or if we're in a situation where other people are, we're in difficult relationships, those all present a challenge to having this unconditional friendship with ourselves. Now, on the other side of this acceptance is when we move more into intention. And again, we can't really focus on intention so much when we're in survival mode. So we have to be able to come back into more of an emotionally regulated state. But everything does change when we start to have our own intention. Her words are emit our own frequency rather than absorbing the frequencies around us. When we start to be the most regulated one in the room, then other people co-regulate with us. So we do talk about that a lot. And also, oftentimes we'll come to this point in our healing where we'll really look at that's theirs, it's not mine. So somebody might look at us in a certain way, or they might try to shame us, or they might exclude us or bully us, or all of those things might happen. And the more work that we do with healing our own core deficiency beliefs and our own inner critic, the more we realize, you know what, that's on them. This isn't on me. I get to look at my own life, my own behavior, and look at it and see, is this in alignment with my own values? And if it is, we develop more of an ability to tolerate other people not approving of us. And that's something that, for me personally, I've worked with in a lot of different ways, as we all have. When I came out in the 70s as a lesbian, that was very much frowned upon. And I had to figure out a way to be okay with that. And one of the ways that we're okay with that is we find other people who believe what we do. So I became part of the community. I developed friendships. I had chosen family. And those are some of the ways that we reassure ourselves that, in fact, those other people who are judging us aren't correct, that there are other ways to look at a situation. And it's really hard to do that. It's hard to set boundaries with people. It's hard to be self-determined because we have to be at a certain level of healing and be able to really work with our own inner state. So that's what we're working with today. So this is the inquiry. You could write and journal as you're doing this. You could lay back and close your eyes. I'll talk about the different components of this. We'll start with acceptance of what is on one column and intention and the power of will. So we'll work with one and then the other. We'll start with the acceptance piece. This is the quote. Our practice is not about accomplishing anything, but about ceasing to struggle and relaxing as it is. And of course, we don't like what is oftentimes. I mean, if things are going really well, then we tend to be happy with what is. And that's not anybody's personal life. There's a lot of struggles and a lot of things that are scary and things that we don't like, and social injustice, and a lot of personal as well as community and cultural things that are going on. So we all find ourselves in this position. So these are some reverse inquiries. They're not affirmations, they're reverse inquiries where we say the phrase and really feel welcome to change the wording if there's something that works better for you. And as we say them, we notice what is our internal response. So we're not so interested in knowing what our cognitive mind knows about this. We're looking to see what our unconscious does, because that's what really runs the show for certain around the nervous system and whether we're in a fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. So take a couple of deep breaths. Let's do a little cyclic sighing. So the deep double inhale and the long exhale through the mouth. So deep inhale through the nose. And then long, slow exhale like you're breathing out through a thin straw. We'll do this a couple of times just to reset, come back into our body. Let your body soften, your face, mouth and jaw, neck and shoulders, your upper back, all the way down through your body. So the first of the phrases, I no longer need to run from fear and discomfort. Let those words resonate and see what comes up. Could be words, images, memories, sensation in your body. I no longer need to run from fear and discomfort. And be alert that you're not shaming yourself. So we all feel like we need to run from fear and discomfort. This is something we can say and notice what comes up when I say that. What is it that's convincing me I do need to run from fear and discomfort? And this is a big way that we keep ourselves safe. I can stay with the urge to leave instead of distracting myself. We have many, many ways that we distract ourselves. So, what if you were to stay instead? I can stay with the urge to leave instead of distracting myself. Remember to breathe, notice thoughts. If anything is getting kind of intense, you do some tapping on your forehead. You could put it into a frame. Notice the space on the outside. Take your eyes around the empty space a few times in each direction. And if it's not too intense, just stay with it. Witness what's happening in your body and your thoughts. Notice where your mind goes. An image of a beer or a piece of chocolate cake or something might come up. Are you sitting watching Netflix? I can stay with the urge to leave instead of distracting myself. I can tolerate not knowing the outcome. And all of these bring up fear in us. So, not to shame yourself if you're having a reaction to it. What we're doing is creating a way to look to see more, know more about what our reaction is. No, I can't. I need to know what's going to happen. Of course, we all feel that way. I can tolerate not knowing the outcome. What is it that would help with that? What would increase your tolerance? Is one way that we could work with this. Notice if your mind is going into worst case scenario thinking. If it is, you could do something to interrupt that. Bring your attention back. Notice what it is that came up with those three phrases, or if you're using a different phrase or different wording. I no longer need to run from fear and discomfort. I can stay with the urge to leave instead of distracting myself, and I can tolerate not knowing the outcome. What is your response to that? And notice if there's something that inspires you to work with that a little bit more later. Part of what happens in this limited time that we have is we become more aware sometimes of what's brewing underground in our unconscious. And let's come into this cultivating of unconditional love, connection, and acceptance of myself. Just take a moment here. You put your hands on your heart if you want. One of the things that is true is that we all struggle with this. And we're all trying to relax with what it is and to not struggle against it so much. For a moment, give yourself some kind connection and love. This is hard. Come back to noticing your breath. Let your body relax. And let's move to the other side, intention and the power of will. This isn't willpower. This isn't gritting our teeth and making it through something. This is Shakti. The Sankalpa Shakti is the power of our intention and our will. And this comes partly from knowing ourselves. I know what I value most deeply. For me, part of what I've been working with in the last few years in particular is I'm on a spiritual path and I know what I value most deeply. So if I'm not making time to meditate, if I'm too busy, if I'm watching Netflix instead, then what's going on with that? So, whatever it is, try not to shame yourself. And let's look at these. I know what I value most deeply. What does your heart know about this? I know what I value. We'll take a little bit of time here. Let that come up. What is it? If you were to say that my top three values or the things that are the most important to me, what would those be? Notice your body. Now, as we go into the next one, I can make decisions in alignment with my deepest knowing. With all of these, we're wanting to make sure we're not going into shaming ourselves. It's hard to do this. And there are things in the way, there are obstacles in the way. Some of those are external. It would be really inconvenient for everybody else if I decided to do this instead of this. Some of them are internal. Well, who am I to think I could do that? I can make decisions in alignment with my deepest knowing. That could take us a while to start to steer the ship in a bit of a different direction. Sometimes we have to make big changes to do that. See what comes up for you. Remember to breathe, stay connected with your body. I know what I value most deeply, and I can make decisions in alignment with that. It would be very common here to have the inner critic come in and shame you for not doing it earlier or more. We're not letting that take over. Might notice it, do something. And we could remind ourselves I'm strong, resilient, and even though I'm not regulated all the time, I know how to come back into self regulation. I'm strong, resilient, and self regulated. I can do this. And notice how that feels. Let yourself feel the strength and resilience. You might bring up images, what it feels like in your body. If you're slumped over, to sit up straight, to take a few deeper breaths. What does it feel like in your body to be strong, resilient, and self regulated? And again, cultivating that unconditional love and acceptance. This is a practice, and it's difficult. And the fact that we're even interested and that we're working with it, we could honor ourselves for that. Feel that in your body. Everything changes when we intentionally move towards what our deepest knowing is. And then again, if you wanted to put your hand on your heart and let yourself feel your own good heart, your own power, your knowing, let yourself feel the complexity of this and also the possibilities. Everything does change when we work with this in this way.